Hello, and thank you for signing up for IEPPal. This video will help you get started and set up quickly. We've consolidated a lot of feedback from users before you into this guided video, so it should be quite useful in creating the experience that you are looking for. Before we get started, please also note that you can sign up for one-on-one training sessions on our website at www.ieppal.com. Simply click the Training and Support menu option and then request a training call. Complete the basic information on how we can reach you, and then select a date and time that is convenient to your schedule, and submit. One of our customer service representatives will phone you at that time and walk you through your personal setup. I'd like to also take a moment to remind everyone that IEPPal is a two-pronged solution that runs both with your PC or Mac and your iPad. They work together and both are required as part of the process. Also, before we get started, it is important to know that it is beneficial to load some preliminary data in a few key areas during your first login to the system. While not required, this will help with the rest of the process running smoothly for you. This is a step that some new users fail to complete, and it winds up causing some inefficiencies later. If you watch this entire startup video, you'll find out the benefits of completing your first visit to IEPPal in this order. IEPPal has been designed to be customized by you for how you wish to run your sessions. It lets you define your scoreable techniques one time in a maintenance area and then reuse them again and again when setting up each IEP. You can also set parameters for prompts, observations, and a lot of other items as well. Well, enough with the primer talk. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll be walking you through a partially completed fictitious user's setup so that you can see what the system looks like once you have some data in it. As mentioned before, you will need to set up some supporting data first to make the whole engine go. This will be short and quick, so please click on the Maintenance button now. From this menu, you have access to Maintain, Techniques, which are the scoreable events that take place during a session, Prompts, the types of prompts that you'll want to use if you're going to turn them on, Pragmatic observations, such as eye contact, posture, and other observations. Locations, such as where you're going to run your sessions, the speech room, the classroom, the auditorium. And school levels, which are the grades. So let's start with techniques. Working with techniques. This is actually one of the important areas that needs to be set up first because you use these later when setting up an IEP. Techniques are loaded here in the maintenance area and then attached to or associated with an IEP as needed. To load a new technique, I would simply click the New Technique button. To edit an existing entry, I would find the entry in the list and click the Edit button to the right. There are only a few fields required to create a technique, but they are very important. The technique label is entered first. This is what you will see when scoring a session for a child, so you want to put something here that is informative to you. This particular technique is referred to as story retelling. You may load a description as well, but that is optional. Next is a designation as to what type of scoring to utilize for this technique. Scoring in IEPPal can be done as either a fixed or free form. Fixed scoring indicates that there is a specific target number of samples or trials that are to be captured during each session. This will be used when the technique is controlled by you. An example is a technique labeled Picture Descriptions. As a facilitator, you control how many pictures you choose to have the child describe. Therefore, you would know how many answers you will be receiving and when to score. Freeform, by contrast, would be used when the technique is uncontrolled or you simply don't know how many samples you will be receiving. As is the case with story retelling, I might receive 8 samples in one session and 14 in the next. The next field is the target field. In the case of fixed techniques, you would load the target value, and IEPPal will drive to attain that number of samples and no more with each session that you facilitate. For freeform techniques, you may load a target, but it is only used as a gauge, not as a finite driver. IEPPal will accept as many samples as you are able to load during the session for freeform techniques. Finally, there is a minimum number for valid sessions. This is the minimum number of samples that you will accept to allow the session to be considered as valid and usable for reporting. For example, if you load as a minimum value the number 7, and in a particular session you only collect 6 samples, the trial will be retained in the database. However, it will not be used for any averages on any reports or any graphs due to the session not attaining the minimum number of samples for the particular technique. Working with prompts. Prompts are an optional setting in IEPPal. If you do not turn them on, scoring sessions will consist simply of marking right or wrong each trial given by the child. A sample of the iPad application screen with no prompts is shown here. Scoring in this model is simply recorded by pluses or minuses and a running tally of percentages for this particular session. However, if you choose to turn prompt scoring on, you may customize how you would like your prompts to be set up, and scoring on the iPad will accommodate that setup as seen by this second image. Scoring on the iPad with this model is recorded by 3 touches for each trial. A plus or minus to indicate right or wrong as before, a touch to indicate the prompt, which is denoted with the green through red buttons across the top here, and a 1 or a 2 to indicate the number of times that that particular prompt was required to achieve the result from the child. I'm going to turn prompt scoring on now and show you how to set up your prompts in this utility screen. Once you click the checkbox, it'll take a moment, but the screen will update with the grid to set up your prompts. Right now I'm set for 5 prompts. This drop down here will let you set as few as 2 and as many as 5. The fields below allow me to customize how I want to view my prompts. This list goes from best to worst, top to bottom, so that my most desired prompts are first and at the top, which is verbal, and my least desired is at the bottom, or last, the physical assist. There are 3 main pieces of data that need to be loaded for each prompt: the description, the button label, which is in the middle column here, and the weighted scores for the first and second attempts for each prompt. My first prompt, the verbal prompt only, is set to be shown as a button with a letter V shown on it, as indicated by the middle column. Since this is my most desired prompt, issuing the prompt 1 time should achieve my highest weighted score, which it does, a score of 10. If I have to issue a verbal prompt a second time, we drop the score to a 9. Continuing on with this logic, if I have to move to my second level prompt, a visual prompt, I'll be clicking a button on it that has a V, capital V, and a small s. And I'll be scoring either an 8 or 7 depending on how many times I have to issue the cue. Let's take note of my button labels in the middle column here, and again review the prompt scoring screen again. Notice that all the labels match up to my setup screen, best to worst, left to right. You will complete the remainder of your prompt type setups accordingly. Working with pragmatic observations. Pragmatic observations are identified during a session and marked on the iPad scoring system. They're shown in the upper right up here, and each time an occurrence is observed, simply touching the plus sign will increment the count for that particular session for that particular child. Setting up this list is easy. Simply click the new pragmatic type, enter your value, and hit the Create button, and your list is updated. Working with locations. Similar to pragmatic observations, locations are loaded simply by clicking the New Location button or editing the existing record by clicking the Edit button. Where the locations are used is to start a session, you'll be prompted as to where the session is going to be run, and that is stored with each session for each child. Working with school levels. Just like pragmatic observations and locations, school levels are easily loaded and maintained by either clicking the new school level or editing an existing record. School levels are used when setting up children to indicate what level of school they're in. The next area we need to set up are our schools. Clicking on the Schools button in the far left brings us to our school list. IEPPal lets you work for many different schools and keeps your student roster separate. To add a new school, you would simply click the New School button or edit an existing school. The only required data element is the name of the school because we use that later on for selecting to start a session. We are now ready to set up our students. Clicking on the My Students button brings me to the student listing screen. If I've loaded more than one school, I'll need to select my school from the drop-down list here. My list of students are all shown here. To add a new individual, I click the New Individual button and I create my student's name. The rest of the information is completely optional. All you need is a first name and a last name. You may use last initials to preserve some privacy if you'd like. You should select the sex, however, because even in the absence of having a photo to upload, the system will automatically put a blue silhouette for boys and a pink silhouette for girls. If you have a photo to upload, you can simply choose the file. Now that the child has been created, you can view or set up an IEP. Clicking on the View IEPs button will show you all loaded IEPs for that child. And since James is a new entry, obviously I have no IEPs previously set up. So I'm going to click the Add New IEP button. There's an entry for a title of the IEP. This is simply used to be a placeholder for the name of this IEP in the event that this child has more than one IEP. Typical entries here might be school year 2011/12 and a start date for the first date that the IEP is effective. That is all that is required to create an initial IEP. Once it's created, it shows up on the list of IEPs for this child. Clicking Edit will let me set up all the parameters now for my IEP. When you first go to this screen, there is one and only one button to work with, and that is Add a New Goal. I'm going to click that button. I'm going to create my first goal. IEPPal does not expect nor require lengthy, verbose goals and/or objectives. You most likely already have to enter those values elsewhere, and there's no need to get lengthy here. Simply putting a headline in for your reference purposes later on is all that is necessary. I'm going to create my first goal now. I'm going to click the Save button, and you'll notice that once I acknowledge the new entry, a new button has shown up. I now have the opportunity to create my first objective inside of this first goal, and I'm going to do so. This is Objective 1 for Goal 1. And again, I'm going to click the Save button. Once I've done that, a new set of fields has also shown up. At this point, I can select and attach or associate my previously loaded techniques that I wish to track scores for to satisfy this objective. I do so by simply selecting from the drop-down, assigning my attach date, and I'll use yesterday, and I click the Attach button. I can attach a second technique if I wish, following the same procedure. At this point, I can choose to load a second objective for this first goal if I wish. And once again, I can follow the same procedure for attaching techniques. I may continue to build out this particular goal, or I may attach a second goal if desired. And I can follow the same procedure to build out the details of this second goal. Now, recognizing that this IEP could get very lengthy, we do have a feature in the IEP setup that lets you collapse a goal once you have it completely set up the way you wish. There's a button, a blue button that says collapse, that will hide that entire goal while I work on setting up my second goal. And likewise, if I wish to proceed to goal 3, I could collapse and hide goal 2. At any point in time, I can expand them so I can work with them again. When I'm all done, I click the update button. And I can go back to my list. Or I can go back to my master student list. And that is how I add and maintain the students within IEPPal. From here, you are now ready to turn to the iPad, download and install the app, and follow the instructions there. It is best if you only load a few techniques and a few students to try the whole system out to make sure you're comfortable with how it works and how to load your data.